Best music of the world. Of the whole world. Wow. A glowing review. Lay down, buddy. Good boy. That's cool. What a good boy. Wow. Oh. Not great. You even see. When we discover. Oh, wow. Oh, you can see it. That's not bad. Could be worse. Interesting. Pastora. The lovely and beautiful Pastora. It's so good that you're back. It's so nice that you're back. It really does make a difference. You are what the kids would call a vibe bringer, meaning that you bring the vibe, the positive vibe. It is primarily you. Oh, Scott and Nat. God, this is delayed for me. Sorry. Love you. What's going on? Let me see. So, here's the thing. Hella vibes, bro. Hella vibes. I am dumb sick. Okay. Kid strep. Tuesday home with her. Went to work Wednesday feeling like I was gonna die. Today didn't go to work. Worked from home. Still feel like I'm gonna die. But I didn't wanna not do this. So just a heads up, if I drift up into La La Land at any point, please be patient with me. But I will do the best I can. Also, if abortion comes up, cool. But also if it doesn't, cool. I say that because I think probably everybody agrees on the idea of abortion. If there's anything that's like new or different, like a not really played out concept regarding abortion or something, I hope you get what I mean. If you have like an interesting thought or question about abortion, I'm down for it. But if we're gonna all agree on something just in a circle, I don't really want to do that. But if you have something cool, like I've heard some good theories on it, I think it's like the most difficult topic of humanity in modern times for a lot of obvious reasons. I just think it's impossible. It's an impossible topic. So maybe we'll touch on it if we can think of a way to address it that's at least unique. But if it's just going to be us saying, it's murder, it's murder, it's murder, like, yeah, we agreed. Cool. Thumbs up. But we'll touch on it for sure. But I think capital punishment has a lot more nuance, in my opinion. And euthanasia, I think, I feel very strongly has a lot more nuance. And then with euthanasia, I think we can add in I don't remember what Canada's calling it. what is it? Assisted death. Medical assistance in dying. That's what they call it. So this is straight from the Canadian government, which is an aspect of euthanasia, right? So a lot more nuance to that, I think. I also have kind of a personal involvement to this topic to a certain degree that we may or may not talk about at some point. So let's I have a dumb allergies today. Maximum nasally sounding. Yeah, dude, that's me. I know I sound like just absolute garbage. Such a nuanced conversation. Anyways, lots of hypothetical situations that might derail the conversation, in my opinion. Yeah, which I think is highly possible. But I think it's interesting, abortion. I think it's interesting in that it's an unsolvable problem. In my opinion, it's an unsolvable problem. But we'll get to it. So where I want to start is the same place we always start when we do things like this, which is gotquestions.org. Because anytime a Christian has a question, they Google it, and gotquestions.org has done a really good job for a lot of years at being at the top of Google SEO. That's it. So they basically get to decide what Christians believe. The number of times educated people that I went to seminary with would pull gotquestions.org out would blow your mind, as if it was like law, when it's not. We've talked about it before, but anytime you want to understand what the religious or Christian bias of a company is, go to their website, go to About Us, and read their mission statement, their vision statement, and you will understand they abide by a denomination. So their view of whatever the topic is going to be skewed that way, which is just, it doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but it's something that just everybody needs to understand, that is the reality of it. So I like to start here because this is what most Christians believe, because this is what they Google. That's a great way to put it. It's the Wikipedia of Christian resources. That's a great way to put it. That's exactly what it is. So what does the Bible say about the death penalty and capital punishment? From a biblical perspective, it's hard to get away from this, in my opinion. So what they said, which we'll probably agree with them on this one, the Old Testament law commanded the death penalty for various acts: murder in Exodus, kidnapping in Exodus, bestiality in Exodus, adultery, Leviticus, homosexuality, Leviticus, being a false prophet in Deuteronomy, prostitution and rape in Deuteronomy, and several other crimes. However, God often showed mercy when the death penalty was due. David committed adultery and murder, yet God did not demand his life be taken. There were specific circumstances to that, but true nonetheless. Ultimately, every sin we commit should result in the death penalty because the wages of sin is death, yada yada. I think that's a stretch. That's blending two things together to try to make a point. I don't know about that. They say, thankfully, God demonstrates his love for us in not condemning us, and then they point to Romans 2. And then they're just going to give you an example. So I do want to read a few of these, though. So one of the important ones is Exodus. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. The things to remember with Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy is if you're Jewish, then you would abide by these. These would be very important to you. They would still be the moral guide because the Old Testament is their only testament. The Old Covenant is their only covenant. The weird thing about Christians is during one conversation, a Christian will acknowledge that the Old Covenant has been fulfilled, not ended, not erased, but fulfilled. And therefore, there's this new covenant of agreements and moral standards. And now we're held to this. But then in another conversation, that same Christian will then try to pull things from Mosaic law and be like, well, the Bible says this. It's very inconsistent. It's also just kind of illogical. It doesn't make any sense. It's the definition of cherry picking, where it depends on the conversation, it depends on the context, it depends on the topic as to whether I decide I want to apply the old covenant to this or the new covenant to this. I would very strongly say that none of this would technically fall under new covenant specifically, because it's all for Jews. So if you're Jewish, then sure. If you're not Jewish, I think it's a really hard sell. Once you get to Romans, it becomes a different story, which in my opinion is why they put it there at all. Ultimately, every sin we commit should result in the death penalty because the wages of sin are death. That's not That's not what that's about, though. Is it about your physical death? Is the wage of sin physical death? The death of your body? Nuance, at least. At least. But I would argue flat no. So then they move into the New Testament a bit, and they've got John 8:7. As they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone." Everybody knows the story. But when the Pharisees brought a woman who was caught in the act of adultery to Jesus and asked him if she should be stoned, Jesus replied, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, I would argue it's a bit of a push at the concept of capital punishment. It's a different thing. If you guys disagree, I'd be happy to hear it. They said this should not be used to indicate that Jesus rejected capital punishment in all instances. Jesus was simply exposing the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. Okay, fair enough. The Pharisees wanted to trick Jesus into breaking the Old Testament law. They did not truly care about the woman being stoned. Where was the man who was caught in adultery? Yeah, which is a great point, right? They're saying, they did not truly care about the woman being stoned. And then they added a note that I like. They said, "Where's the man?" Adultery takes two in most circumstances, and probably in that one. God is the one who instituted capital punishment. Whoever sheds a man's blood, and then they pull out the Exodus there again. Jesus would support capital punishment in some instances. Jesus also demonstrated grace when capital punishment was due. I have a question about this. How would you guys justify that? Jesus would support capital punishment in some instances. Not that it's not true, but how would you justify that? Where would you pull that from? How would you decide that? Actually, let's just decide that. Would Jesus approve of capital punishment in some instances? Let's say some. Are there any instances where Jesus would approve of capital punishment? And if so, what are they? Or what would like one be? What would an example be? And why? The why is what matters. The why is what matters. Because you can't just say murder. Okay, why? Adultery. Okay, why? The book of, get the hell out of here with your book of Revelation. No, well, explain. Explain. I'm just kidding. Explain. Because of the way that he comes back and rocks the world, just in general. There's some nuance to that, though, too. Like, that's a very specific event, right? Like, the second coming is a specific event. So let's say in 2024, would Jesus approve of capital punishment? If so, in what is an instance in which he would do so? Rodriguez, good to see you. Capital punishment, would Jesus approve? If he would approve, what is an example of a situation that he would approve? I'm curious. Nat said, I'm tempted to say no, but I don't have any biblical backing either way. I think that's the tough thing is I'm really trying to rack my brain. But I think I would say there's no way to know, really. There's no way to know. I think it's tough, and you have to kind of, there it is, the golden rule. I think all you can really go off of is the golden rule. But that doesn't necessarily mean the consequence is physical death. What if the consequence is misery until physical death, and then death of the soul or spirit? You know, the concept of hell, loosely. Why would it necessarily mean capital punishment? Which would mean like the immediate consequence of losing your physical life. Which doesn't necessarily say anything about your afterlife. You could immediately lose your physical life wrongfully and still go to positive afterlife. So the question specifically is if somebody murders today, thoughtfully, intentionally, with, malice, would Jesus approve of us ending their lives? Which is the question in a general sense, right? If Jesus is kind of the standard, and we're trying to decide from a Christian perspective, is capital punishment right or wrong? That is the question. You've heard it said that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Which means what, though? What does that mean? Specifically. Because you also have Jesus saying, don't do X. And then in another situation, he will do X. Because it is justice. I think is one of the important words with this is like, God was all about justice in the Old Testament. The way that looked for what we know, because of our very limited literature of the New Testament, Jesus was also about justice. In my opinion, it had been watered down, and I think we've probably lost some things, but even if we haven't, Jesus was still very much about justice. So what is justice? Scott said it suggests a move away from the retributive justice of the Old Testament towards a more forgiving and nonviolent approach. Thoughts? Yeah, in a sense, right? So then with that, I guess theologically, how do you rectify that with God? I don't disagree, but then that opens up the door to you're literally saying that God and Jesus are two different things. What they taught are two different things. God very much taught retribution. He very much taught, in many circumstances, revenge, like vengeance. And maybe not in like the normal use of the word in modern times, but the actual word revenge. God was, he was vengeful. So if God showed and taught vengeance, which he did, and in Mosaic law, he absolutely did. But then Jesus, who's supposed to be equal to God, identical, the same, we're saying here that he teaches the opposite. How then can you say they're the same thing? Which is a side note, I get, and I don't want to derail us, but it becomes kind of a tough question in that regard. Nat said, who's to say that somebody couldn't genuinely ask for forgiveness right before death and then go to paradise for eternity? Is that a true punishment? Plus, could us enforcing the death sentence be seen as murder as well? Great question. Is that person guilty of sin? For example, the judge. I'm really glad you asked that. And then let me get ghost scripture up here. That's a great question, though. Let's answer that. So she said, who's to say someone couldn't genuinely ask for forgiveness right before death and then go to paradise for eternity? That's a good question. But also, who's the serial killer? Ladies, you'll know this because women love serial killers. Who's the serial killer who, super famous, right before he died, he said he was a Christian? Really, really famous guy. Super famous guy. Every woman definitely knows who I'm talking about. Kat certainly does, but she's in the shower. So someone else is going to have to step up. Bundy, right? Ted Bundy. I think. Can you hear us on Discord? No, I can't. Hold on. Oh, Jesus. No, hold on. Discord, hold on 1 second. Sorry, my microphone software had an update, and I had a hard time getting things to work, which means Discord is also having an issue. Just give me 2 seconds. All right, somebody in Discord talk.
Ew.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're good now. Everybody's good now.
Sure. I was just gonna pop in and say hi. I was blacksmithing all day. I haven't gone to bed since 8 yesterday night.
Oh my God, dude, go to sleep.
I don't want to miss this one though. It's a good topic.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple verses in the New Testament that I kind of struggle with when it comes to, this topic is rough for me in general because I don't know that I have much theological input to kind of support what I think and feel. And normally I'm not like that. I try to go off of like what the Bible says and go from there. But these are, I don't know, these are rough topics. So, but one of them is in, I think it's 2nd Thessalonian, and I can't remember if I put it in the chat, but it's 2nd Thessalonian chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. maybe 6 through 9.
6 through 8.
Yeah, or 6 through 9.
God is just. He will pay back trouble to those who trouble you, and give relief to you who are troubled, and to us all as well. This will happen when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in blazing fire with his powerful angels. He will punish those who do not know God and do not obey the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty Old Testament.
Agreed. Yeah.
And the other one is that, like, the one piece of scripture that I feel like I can't get past is the one where it talks about people's conscience being seared. And to me, I feel like I kind of translate that as like you're done. Like, it almost sounds like, to me, there's a part where you just go so far off and like you're just not coming back.
Yeah. So the question with that though is like, that means there's a threshold. So at some point on the scale, you've done so much. It means at a certain point, any human can cross this threshold, and no matter what, could never return. With that, theologically, you are putting an implication that there is limitation on what God can do. I don't disagree with you, but that then exists, right?
Yeah. And I think the evidence that I would have for that is, okay, maybe men will like this one. I think it was the very first woman that was on death row. What's her name? The actress Charlize Theron played her in the movie. But I know she basically said something along the lines of, her last words were like, yeah, no, you need to kill me, because if you do let me out, like, I'll just do it again. And I feel like that kind of backs up that portion of scripture, and why I'm behind like capital punishment. Or I know we talked a while back about in Europe. There was a case in, I think, Tennessee or Alabama recently, but in Europe with pedophiles and rapists, that they were reducing their sentences if they agreed to get castrated.
Right.
And a lot of them were just kind of like, yep, I'm going to do this because I know that if you let me out, like, I'll do it again. And repeat offenders is a thing. So to some degree, I feel like, yeah, just knock it out. And I mean, I don't want to get political, but I think the tax dollars supposedly say that, it costs more to keep them alive anyways.
Oh, it absolutely costs more. Yeah.
I don't understand how.
3 square meals in a bed for a lifetime.
Yeah, but that to me sounds more expensive. Like, I know we don't do firing squads or anything like that anymore, but
we should.
I agree.
All right, so it's about 20. We'll round up 22,000 a year per inmate.
It shouldn't be. That's only in America. Only in America.
And then multiply that by 1.2 million, and that's your cost per year, roughly. So yeah, it's insanely expensive. You have to think there's medical there, there's dental there. It's not good, but it's there.
Yeah,
there's facilities, there's contractors, there's employees, you have the food, then you have fights and you have to outsource medical, there's transportation, there's court fees, there's private prisons, public prisons, not private and government prison. It's super expensive. Yeah, it's wildly expensive. So from like a tax perspective or from a government perspective, yeah, it would be ideal, but it is a moral question.
Supposedly it costs more to kill them than it does to keep them alive. That's the part that I've heard, and to me that doesn't make sense.
I don't think that's true.
That's only for like the cocktail of whack drugs that they use for lethal injection, which is actually more painful than getting shot.
Yeah.
Because it's a paralysant and then something that stops your heart. They don't care if the guy feels pain. It's if you can see him feel pain.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I know that sounds bad.
Not entirely against it either, but it's certainly more expensive than just, $9 million. So
yeah, exactly.
Even with the current shortage. Now, to bring it back biblically, because I had a question on this. wasn't there something to do in the New Testament about like following the laws or the orders or the traditions of the place that you're living in while still being Christian, as long as it doesn't conflict? Would that have anything to do with like capital punishment and whatnot? Because Christianity is... Sorry?
Is it Romans 8? Is it Romans 8, that one?
Yeah, I think he's talking about Romans.
Probably. Yeah. But with that, it's sort of just like, I don't know quite if the separation of church and state is a good thing either way, but Christianity certainly is individual with like how all of us act and everything, and then we come together in church and talk and this and that. If we aren't the ones executing the laws, do we so much have a say in what laws are enforced, or is it our direct participation? Like, no, you shouldn't kill it. Like you shouldn't murder a guy, but should you be out and out protesting how a non-religious entity enforces their own laws?
Yes.
Why?
Because death is a little bit different. I think death is kind of universal. It doesn't matter the form of government. Like, there's other things where it can get a little bit more ethical, like abortion and euthanasia, but I don't know that when it comes to capital punishment.
I don't think those are more ethical than execution, because execution, the guy had a chance to keep it together and he just couldn't and was executed for it.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. That's point blank. Whereas, and I feel like the other ones are a little bit more controversial. But
yeah, okay.
Here, let's do that. Let's broaden the question real quick. I think this might help. So, is it ever okay from a Christian perspective to artificially end a life? Whether it's euthanasia, assisted suicide, capital punishment, abortion, anything where you're intentionally removing the light out of a human being. Is it ever justified? If so, then what is an instance of this? Which I know a few have been mentioned, but...
This isn't on the list, but the only one that I can think of and will defend wholeheartedly is self-defense. Or defense of like people you're responsible for. Somebody breaks into my house, is going to murder me or my family. I'm going to have to shoot him.
Yeah, remove that though, because that's a reaction. Right, like that. We can talk about that too, but that's different. Like that's a reaction to something not planned.
Oh, artificial, as in like not so much premeditated, but
no, premeditated.
Sort of a judgment.
Yeah, premeditated. So, because assisted suicide, what they're doing in Canada is there's all kinds of different reasons. I believe even diabetes is one of them, where you can go to a doctor and the doctor will literally recommend you end your life. So that's assistance in ending your life for medical reasons. You have euthanasia, whether they're old or sick or whatever it is. You have other people who just on their own commit suicide because they decide they don't want to be here anymore. So all of those things, self-defense remove, because I see it as a completely different thing. You're reacting to something that was not premeditated for you, right? You didn't plan on that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be self-defense. Yeah. But so if you're in any way premeditated, planning, it's thoughtful, it's with intention, ending your life or the life of somebody else, is that ever okay?
No.
Okay.
And I think I know.
Go ahead. I want to hear your no. Why?
Because no matter what, and I know we talked about people being too far gone and so on and so forth. I don't think I have the faculties to decide who is too far gone or not, nor do I think that however many people are in a jury could do that. But as you had said before, with like a more forgiving sort of vibe in the New Testament, I would rather it be that everybody has that chance to find salvation than just be killed before they could.
So abortion and euthanasia, you're still no?
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, no, that one, no.
So, okay, I'm just curious then. If we're talking Hitler's mom is pregnant
no.
and wants an abortion, okay. I was just curious.
No, so not even if it's Gandhi's mom being pregnant, neither way.
So capital punishment is okay? Is that what you... Sorry, I was reading something. You said capital punishment is okay. Go ahead.
I'd say no.
He's against
at least personally.
Okay.
I think my mind's been changed. I'm all for capital punishment in a sense, but from a Christian standpoint, no, I'd have to be against it. because we would always want someone to have that chance to find salvation no matter how lost they are, because who could judge if you are that far gone that you could no longer like be saved?
Right.
But God appointed judges for that.
Okay.
God appointed judges for that. Like there's a whole judicial system that he established to decipher.
Well, I don't think
things
it's
like that.
America's though.
I was gonna say, where is this judicial
Well,
system?
But right.
But I
I
get
hope
what
this
you
is
mean. Like
But
theoretically,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So like
agreed.
it's like and I don't know how to say it. Like please don't take offense to this, but this is the only way I'm trying to get my point across. But like you're a dad, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
So
no, I would murder anybody who harmed my family. Absolutely. Would it be right? No. Would I do it? Yes, because I'd be angry. I'm
Yeah,
not saying it's the right thing to do,
I
but
disagree.
I couldn't control myself.
I think it's right. I think it's right. Here's where it gets confusing for me. Is like you had said a minute ago, Honk, that capital punishment you were against because you like this idea that they could eventually come to Christ. Like, cool. In the case of somebody who's killing a bunch of people, or
serial killers.
or R-wording kids or women or whatever, how many people get to have their lives completely destroyed for that one asshole to have the chance at salvation? That's where I get stuck with that, because theoretically I agree with you, but then when I actually play it out in the realistic world, I'm like, yeah, hell no, they need to be put down.
Now, here's the
personally.
question. Oh, I bet there are plenty of verses on it. Is how great God's judgment and vengeance will be on those people when they go. Is like, are there any mercies that we can fathom that God just couldn't absolutely blow out of the water when that guy croaks, winds up at the pearly gates, and I don't know, gets RKO'd by Michael or whatever,
For sure.
or however that's decided.
But then why did God do it in the Old Testament? Why did he direct humans to take people out if they were not behaving in society? Is the question for me.
I can only assume because the supply of unblemished male sheep would absolutely go out of stock if people kept doing that. And I think it's a question of back then, like to atone for sins before Jesus' sacrifice, you would have to sacrifice this, do that. You know, a woman's on her monthly cycle, hands a turtle to the temple priest, if that's an actual thing. I heard that a while ago. And that was how you solved those issues. But now with Jesus' sacrifice, we got the company card that can be upcharged however much. It just zeroes out.
But that's talking, I think, more like atonement. We're talking more of like actual criminal offenses, because from what I recall in the Old Testament, like in the book of Judges, I know, and maybe Joshua kind of elaborates a little bit more, but there was 2 prisons. One for more minor offenses and the other ones that was like more severe. So it's my understanding, like, for example, murder. You catch your wife with someone and in the heat of it all, blah, 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 right? That's a lot different than Bundy, sorry.
Yeah, premeditation, like crime of passion.
Yeah. So, like, again, going back to the fact that we're all parents, you know, and you find out there's a serial killer out and about, and then eventually it hits close to home. You're telling me even in that circumstance, capital punishment should not be an option, knowing that this is what serial killers do.
It depends on whether or not the authorities find him first or I find him first.
But that's not the question. That's not, no. It's an ethical question.
Ethical, morally.
It's not dependent on any small circumstance. It's, is it right or is it wrong? Ethical, moral. You got to take all the little, details out of it. Just it's a matter of fact.
Yeah.
This person has killed 15 kids in your neighborhood. Is it ethical for you as a community to take him out? Or is that unethical and he gets to keep living?
I wish I hadn't heard that opening spiel you said, because this is a relatively new position that I take.
Right.
Wait, you cut out on my end. What was the take?
Oh, sorry.
I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can.
No, I
don't have
You're cutting out. You're
one.
cutting
This is a
out.
new position previously. Oh, dang it.
Okay, wait. You might
How's
be
that?
back. Yeah, try now.
All right. I have to organize myself. Well, with this being a new position, I don't quite have all of the information or the opinions they could form normally, especially when I'm this unconscious. It's a tough one, too, because you'd like
Yeah.
them to be saved, but if they're that awful, I'd say, you know what? Yes, capital punishment is okay, because that person, though we may not be perfect judges of their intent, like
Right.
crime of passion, guy murders somebody and is completely repentant of it, it's relatively obvious whether or not you can tell. Someone like Bundy, someone like that female on death row that Rodriguez mentioned, I can only assume that that's why we have such a large jury, is those people can judge that character well enough to the point that we're comfortable with understanding that they might be that far gone.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's good. That makes sense. Okay, so
Euthanasia, I'm on the fence with, though.
Euthanasia's tough. Yeah. Does it? I guess before we move on, does anybody else have anything specific for capital punishment? Nat brought up an interesting point though, so I do want to read that. She said, "Didn't Jesus forgive a murderer when he was on the cross right next to him? That guy really waited until the last second." Which I said, because I've always looked at it like this: is that say there's another criminal on another cross on another hill, not next to Christ, he would not have been saved. Which is just
right. There was two criminals, and
you know?
he only said it to one, right?
Right, but even then,
speaking of how hard it is to
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Speaking of how hard it is to be a judge of character as to whether or not a person's actually repentant for the thing they did, you got the perfect judge of character right next to you on the same build of cross. I'm pretty sure Jesus would know whether or not that guy meant it.
Yeah, fair point. But interesting thought nonetheless. Other criminals on other crosses on other hills at the same time, not within earshot, they're not having that same revelation. It shows a little bit of just nuance to the reality of things. Okay. So Lilith said, "I think only God can decide who lives and who dies."
But Lilith, he didn't
Now, that
do that in
brings
the
a
Old
whole-
Testament. He had judges for that.
I can respect the theory. I guess I see it like this. If you have a meter, right, like a thermometer, where something goes up and down depending on how severe it is. It's a severity meter. And for each individual, you're constantly moving. It's like a wave on the severity thermometer. And if somebody's always peaking and they're causing damage to people all over the place and mayhem, and they're causing society to dysfunction and all of these things that inhibit human flourishing, I think at a point you either just say F it and quit, or you do something about it. Personally, I'm not okay with people who are actually doing the right things and trying to live a good life being murdered or sexually assaulted or whatever, because it's not within my right to take his life. Well, that's pretty immoral to me. It's like it's pretty backwards from the general theme and thesis of like what God teaches about the value of human life. I think if
it's
you
protecting the wolf and not the sheep.
Agreed. And I think honestly, if you take that point, and not to anybody specific, but I think if you take that point, I think you're opening the door to struggle when you then talk about abortion and you talk about euthanasia and things like that. I think you're leaving this little crack in the door of what is the value of human life. It's not absolutely valuable then. If you're willing to lose multiple humans and diminish the lives of multiple humans to try to save the life of one human who has done nothing but cause damage, I think then it leaves the door cracked when you move on to things like abortion, which is tough.
And euthanasia.
Yeah. But again, that would be quick judgment rather than premeditated. I don't know exactly what that was in reference to. In general, to capital punishment, I suppose. Okay, so now euthanasia. Same thing. GodQuestions.org. What does the Bible say about euthanasia and assisted suicide? I don't care about the monologue. We live in what is sometimes described as a culture of death. Abortion on demand has been practiced for decades. Now some are seriously proposing infanticide, which is true. And euthanasia is promoted as a viable means of solving various social and financial problems. True, this focus on death as an answer to the world's problems is a total reversal of the biblical model. Death is an enemy. Oh, I gotta see this. The last enemy to be destroyed is death, I suppose. Life is a sacred gift from God out of Genesis. That's good. When given the choice between life and death, God told Israel to choose life. He also told them to choose death in the same book, which is the problem with these sources, right? The overriding truth that God is sovereign drives us to the conclusion that euthanasia and assisted suicide is wrong. We know the physical death is inevitable for us mortals, Psalm and Hebrews. However, God alone is sovereign over when and how. I love this. Hold on. Okay, so on one of their pages with capital punishment, they're like, yes, you can absolutely kill humans. The Bible says so. There are specific circumstances in which to kill humans. And then they say God alone is sovereign over when and how a person's death occurs. This is the problem.
Yeah.
There's
I hate
no
that
consistency. It's god awful. It's god awful. But a great example as to why, don't just read this shit and then move on with your life. Okay, so I guess opinions first, and maybe we'll categorize this in two separate spots. Let's do suicide, where an individual on their own, with no outside help whatsoever in this scenario, decides to take their own life. And then on the other hand, we'll do euthanasia / assisted suicide, where you are assisting somebody or helping them in some way end their life, whether it's euthanasia or assisted suicide. Whoever wants to go first, feel free.
I think individual suicide is wrong. Oh man, I wish my brain worked. Simply because, how do I say it? Wouldn't Job have kind of offed himself if he was going through all that crap and it was okay for him to punch out whenever?
What are you asking? Would it be okay, or wouldn't he have done it?
That's my thought. Is what is it? Never gives you a burden more than you can bear.
Oh, that is so not biblical. Sorry.
Isn't that in there though?
No, it really isn't. I promise. It's one of those
Did I mix that up with the one where he doesn't give you a temptation that you can't overcome?
Wait, what was the question?
God doesn't give you more than you can handle.
That's not out of Job. That theme is absolutely out of Job, but the reality with Job is that he couldn't handle it.
Right.
But what you're referring to is a New Testament verse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of Paul's epistles, which is
Corinthians. I think it's in Corinthians. But...
Was it? Yeah, Corinthians or Philippians. Either way, some of those epistles, some of the things like that, I think we just have to be careful with how to play. It's like the Philippians 4:13, right? The back of every sports jersey from a Christian sports team.
Oh yeah, no, I don't like the bumper stickers.
Paul was, going through prison and all of these awful things, and you can tell that he's killing himself to try to talk himself up to get through it. And so epistles like Philippians, when he was dealing with that, there's so much motivation and encouragement and catchy, catchphrases and stuff for motivation, because he was in the depths of hell dealing with some shit, and you could just really tell. But I think people get shit all the time that they can't deal with. I think it happens all the time. So I think it's something that sounds good, and I think in an esoteric way, kind of, or for a lot of people maybe it's true. But I think a lot of people get absolutely crushed by things. Is the reality. Maybe they shouldn't, but certain people will get crushed by depression and then kill themselves. So they did get something they couldn't handle.
But I was going to say, I thought about stuff like that too. I think there should be some very strict prerequisites at the very least. Like, what are your hormone levels like? You know, what's your history with depression? Do you have like very low dopamine levels or
You mean
something like that?
for suicide?
Yeah, or very low serotonin, like something, you know, because I feel like that can't be completely objective. Like if it's a hormone imbalance, and then all of a sudden you find out later if you would have given them some freaking meds, then you know it wouldn't even been a thought in their mind. That would be the concern I have. However, I think initially I would have been like, you know, hunk father, where it's like a blatant no, like this is not okay. But I did put in the chat for this topic like a little, I think it's like a 2-minute video of a trailer from Netflix, like kind of talking about euthanasia, where you actually like see the suffering of people.
Well, I was on like individual suicide, like you just grab grandpa's gun and paint the ceiling, not anything medically sanctioned.
Well, so hold on, because we're getting caught in the weeds again.
Yeah.
I guess start with this, and then we can go into the weeds. Is it? And I posted a poll in YouTube too. Is it ever okay to commit suicide? I don't care about your hormones. I don't care about what your life's like. I don't care if you were sexually assaulted. I don't care about any of this stuff right now. Is it ever okay, regardless of circumstance? And then we can go into, well, in some circumstances, okay, what then are those circumstances? But outright, there will be people who say, no, there is absolutely zero circumstance that is ever okay to commit suicide. Is it ever okay, yes or no? And there's a poll up on YouTube there.
I don't know. I'm going to stand by that.
I'll hop on the no hill.
No? Okay.
Yeah. I'm stuck on I don't know.
I think it's tough, especially when it's broad like that. I think once you narrow it down to, okay, in this situation, is it okay? But then from a general sense, if it depends on the situation, isn't it? Is suicide ever okay? Yes, no, or depends on the situation. If I had to bet, I would probably say most people end up on depends on the situation. And then most other Christians will say no. But I think if you really presented them with some situations, you might get them to say it depends on the situation.
Right. And like one of the research things I gave you, just I thought it was like Christians, but it's religion in general. Apparently, every single religion says no, it's not okay. They don't care if you're Buddhist, Hindu, LDS, charismatic Christian, Catholic Church. The Pope blatantly said no.
Yeah.
All
Of Christianity for sure. And I mean, most Eastern and a lot of Western religions are not about it too.
But like I said, that video clip, that one, the trailer, that one was a little bit, I don't know, man. And as someone who has health issues and has dealt with pain, like I don't know. It's different when you go through things.
This euthanasia one?
Yeah, it's hella different. Like I said, a few years ago, I would have said a blatant no. But as someone like who's been really, really sick, and like one of the diseases I have is supposed to be the top 10 most painful known to man. So I get it.
So here, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but my mother took her life a handful. Okay, so we have at some point. So my mom took herself out 3-4 years ago, and she was in, you know, so you and I have talked about this at least personally. She had massive health problems since like I was 1 year old. So like my entire life she had massive health problems, always in pain, you know, down the painkillers, all that stuff for 20 plus years at the time. And she eventually she had enough. A lot of stuff was happening with doctors and with prescriptions, and she got overwhelmed. And you get into like addiction becomes a part of it. Even though you're going to doctors, you're doing it, potentially the right way and responsibly. It doesn't make you not addicted to it. Drugs work the way they work. So there's that aspect too. But it just, from the perspective, like most of my family was like, not cool, because everybody gets to suffer through this. And there was no notice. There was, no like last phone call, no nothing. So no closure for most of us. But on the other hand, it's like I've never, for me, I had never seen her not suffer. I had never seen her not be miserable. Like most of her life. She had her moments, she had her days, whatever. But the majority of her existence was pain. It was not happy, and it was her suffering through to try to make her family happy. So on that hand, like I could see it and I could understand. I didn't approve of it. But on the other hand, like I don't feel what she's feeling. I don't know what it's like to be in pain all of the time or miserable all the time. And she was the person who was like massive Christian, wild Christian, the most positive, happy, obnoxious person you've ever met in your life, because she's miserable, but she's being the most obnoxiously happy, loving, joyful person ever. But eventually, some people fall off that cliff, and she eventually like couldn't deal with it anymore. So from a personal standpoint, I absolutely get both sides. I don't necessarily think it's ever okay. But just like other things, I think there are some situations where like I at least understand it. I get where you're coming from. I get why you did it. I may or may not approve, but that doesn't really matter. It's happened.
No, it does though, because honestly, Joe, your story's the only one I've had in my mind that makes me on the fence about it, right? Because like I've thought about this. Like I'm not. I mean, I say I'm old, but I'm not like super old. But I question like, okay, so as I get older, and if this stuff continues, like I don't know how much longer I can do this. I don't know if it's okay morally or ethically, but I think a huge factor has to do with like what would my family, feel. And
Yeah.
it is a huge factor, because I hate saying this, but I feel like to some degree, if God was okay with it, then there would be some kind of like universal peace to some degree. I mean, I could be wrong.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Like, if we just look at old age or something, who died recently? Andy Stanley? No, Charles Stanley, sorry. I think he was well into his 90s, and I think his son, when he passed, it was like a sense of like peace and like, this is okay, everything is fulfilled, we're all going to be okay, it's going to hurt for a while, but you know what I mean? And I feel like somehow God is in that grief.
Right.
But I just really question when it comes to, euthanasia or assisted suicide because of things like that. I don't know that God's really in it, and I feel like some of that would reflect in the aftermath of how it would go with my family. You know what I mean? Like that's that's so like I didn't want to ask you directly, but I was kind of hoping you would bring it up, because if there's anything I want to hear from is a child who's had to do it, because like as a mother, who goes through a lot of pain with these diseases, if my kids were to say no, man, this is an emotional topic. If my kids were like, no, then, and I knew that, I don't.
Yeah, but you do know that. You do know that. You already know that. I mean, that's unless your kids don't like you, but I know that's not true. Like I don't know. I can tell you still all the time. I'll have days where it just completely crushes me. Yeah. She was like my only family I ever really talked to, and we talked all the time. Like most days I talk to my mother. I don't really talk to my dad that much. I don't talk to my sisters that much. Her all the time. And so, but I think even if that wasn't the case, even if I talked to her once a week or a couple times a month, especially if you have kids, like I have a kid, she got to see my kid for a couple years, and now, never again. She was so excited about Zion, though, because this whole big thing, because my other sister didn't have a kid. So I think like all the nuances, again, just like anything else, but I think even no kids, and you guys don't talk every day, I think still like it crushes your family, especially depending, I think too, is like, how did you do it? Was there forewarning? Like, did you talk to them at all? What, did you write like very detailed letters before or something? And like, I think it adds to it, but at the end of the day, still, like, is it right or is it wrong? I don't know. I think too, it becomes like a threshold thing. Well, are you just killing yourself because sometimes you get a headache? Or are you killing yourself because like, literally 22 out of 24 hours, you want to cry because you're physically in so much pain all the time. And even then, like, is it right, or are you supposed to suffer? My mom's whole thing for a lot of years was like, she felt like her calling was to suffer, and was to show other people like that you could survive and suffer, that you could make it through life and still like do your duties as a woman and a person while suffering. And she would say like, about that and other things, but like certain people, just, you have different plights. And like another example that's really stupid, but it's easy to picture, somebody who doesn't have the ability to like have sexual intercourse, is that like, it's totally different, but that's something that person will never get to experience ever should they kill themselves. So are they
No.
justified in killing themselves? Like, it's a dumber example, but it's something everybody can at least imagine. I don't know. I think it's tough no matter what.
Well, I think the other aspect that also needs to be addressed when it comes to those things is there is a certain amount of, I don't want to say sanity, but that's the best word I could use, but sanity that leaves you when you're in that much pain, an extreme amount of pain. Um, like I remember being in so much pain, and I literally had the thought where like I could barely walk or breathe, and I was thinking like, okay, if I just go to the kitchen and get a knife and cut myself open and start pulling out stuff that hurts, I'll be okay. And like I actually believed that. And I think it took maybe 2 or 3 days to not think like that, like once the pain actually wore off. But and that's not the only example I have, but there's quite a few where I've noticed like you're just not in your right mind when you're suffering
Right.
to that extent.
Right.
Like it's
And that was, so when you're of sounder mind, I think that would be the time to like, this is what I actually believe about it. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because then I realized when I became sound of mind, I was like, holy shit, Vanessa, like you could have bled out. Like you can't
Yeah.
do that, like I don't know. And that was one of the more bigger. There was other things where like I accused the staff at the hospital of stealing my socks, and turns out I never went to the hospital with socks, and like all kinds of stuff. Like, but yeah, I mean, it's dangerous and scary.
It is, for sure. I mean, it's really tough. All right. So the Judas thing, for anybody who's not paying attention to the chat, for a little bit of a lighter note, because this is rough shit. They're talking, Ghost and Nat are talking about Judas. So if the Bible doesn't reference suicide directly, it stands to reason it doesn't affect salvation, which I think is interesting. I think, I don't know, that's a really deep topic, I guess. Does murder remove somebody's ability for salvation at the end? I don't know. And then is suicide murder of oneself? I don't know. Nat said, now I understand why you asked about Judas, because Ghost asked if Judas was saved, or if we know that from the Bible. I don't think there's anything directly about it. I think you can make some insinuations based on context, but I think it's pretty open for interpretation. But she said, now I understand why Ghost asked about Judas. I wonder if he ever was saved. He was one of Jesus' chosen ones. Ghost said, right. He played a role that Jesus clearly knew about, so I think he was saved, which is the interesting point, because the whole thing was planned, right? Like Jesus came here knowing what was going to happen. Somebody had to betray him, which if you think about it, some of it all, the whole thing is kind of tough, because it seems really odd for this all to be planned ahead of time, and then for all of it to happen, and then still people pretend like it didn't make sense, or that they were confused by it when it was a part of the plan the whole time. But regardless, if Jesus did know the whole plan the whole time, then Judas was kind of just playing his role. So maybe it wasn't necessarily a betrayal. But Nat said, and Jesus knew someone had to do it, so he chose him. I almost want to say that suicide was a worse offense, worse than betrayal. But if you know who killed Jesus, you killed Jesus, how could you possibly cope? A heavy thing to live with. Judas was a cog in the machine, carrying out God's will, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. Nat said, I think because Jesus knew someone was going to do it, and he specifically chose Judas. I don't know for sure. Yeah, there's no way to know for any of it, right? But it's if you believe what you believe about Jesus that most Christians do, it was the plan. So the whole like Judas betrayed him thing doesn't like it doesn't logically make sense from Jesus's perspective. From the perspective of the humans of the time, sure. From the perspective of like understanding the larger theological model of who God is and who Jesus was, it makes absolute sense. The betrayal aspect doesn't make sense. It's not betrayal if it's planned. It was like it's almost as if they had to have some kind of, even if Judas wasn't aware of it, Judas and Jesus had some kind of under the table agreement, even if
It
only
sounds
Jesus
like
knew about it.
It sounds like Calvinism. I just kind of wonder though, like, because there is that portion of scripture where it talks about Satan entering Judas to kind of influence it.
What, with Calvinism though?
You know, like how they think there's predestination. No offense to anybody who has that denomination, but I'm just saying, yeah, okay, so you know where I'm getting at.
Yeah, but it was messianic prophecy, so kind of different. I get why you're saying it for sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, not maybe. It was.
Well, I know that it was prophecy, but
Okay.
the fact that it would be Judas specifically, and this
Right.
guy's just not make it, like that's where it gets really nitty gritty into details, and
Fair.
who knows?
Yeah, no, it's confusing. It's a confusing model altogether. But God was the same way. The Old Testament, it was like people were surprised at God doing exactly what God said he was going to do, and then God getting mad because people did exactly what he made them to do. There's a lot of weird shit like that in the Bible where people or God are upset about something that they did or that they had planned, like that was supposed to happen the whole time, and yet God is still like super cranky about it. It becomes tough, and then you try to get into like, okay, what is the genre of what I'm reading, and is this meant to be taken literal, or is they're trying to teach me a story? Scott said, have you ever known what you were about to do wasn't cool with God, but you still did it? Is there anyone that hasn't? I can't think of anyone but Jesus. Yeah, no, I think that's everybody on the planet, right? Somebody had portrayed the traitor 100%. Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing. Like, somebody had to be the betrayer. Had to happen. Just get out of my head. All right. Let me see. There was something else here. That is, we didn't even really hit it. So, suicide. There were more people that said no than yes, which is kind of to be expected. But actually, no, it ended up tied. So 37% said no, and 37% depends on the situation, which is exactly what we kind of guessed. And then the smaller percentage said yes, it's okay to commit suicide with no situations or circumstances at all. Just yes, it's okay, period.
When did you put the poll up? Was it like after a little bit more personal, or?
Yeah, it was during that when you and I were doing the person. It was 8. There were 8 total, but it's not like we have a big sample size. But it was eight people of 10 or whatever's here, 11. Yeah, all of religion says no. Like Rodriguez said very accurately, and I think she had the stats up here. I had up a minute ago, but here it is. The views of religions on suicide. We don't need to read it because what she said is 100. What you said is 100% correct. Like virtually every religion says no. Catholics are super people like Nat and their traditional freaking papistry. They're all very much no suicide. Hard. Really big deal. Other Christians are less about it, and the more Christian becomes progressive, not politically, but progressive by the literal definition of the word, suicide is becoming more of a mainstream okay thing, just like virtually everything else. So then past suicide, or if anybody has anything biblically on it. Obviously, there's nothing in the Bible necessarily about suicide, but it's where there's also nothing in the Bible necessarily about abortion, and yet people use the Bible all the time, sometimes accurately, sometimes inaccurately. But same thing with suicide. Aggregate the data. What do we know about God, about Jesus, about morality, the golden rule? all of these things, aggregate some scripture. Is there any way to justify suicide? Yes or no? Ghost just threw out Matthew 24:13. Do you think it's alluding directly to suicide? Or just like in general? So it says, but he... Whoa. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto the nations, and then shall... All right, hold on.
That's more like salvation, the suffering that they were enduring during that time for preaching the gospel. That's my understanding of the context.
So, yeah, I was going to say, wasn't this about faith? Was it 24:13? Persecution put to death, and you will be hated by... Yeah, so perseverance. I mean, in aggregation, I get it. Yeah, at that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray the hate to each other. But that was what I was going to say. So this is kind of a pushback to Isaiah 7:9, which is those who don't stand firm in their faith will not stand at all. It's a bit of kind of a kickback to it. So I'd say the general context is faith, specifically, talking about persecution, being put to death, and then the verse he actually put out, which was, but the ones who stand firm to the end will be saved. The context is definitely faith. I think maybe in aggregate with other things, I could see, why you'd use it. But I think direct context would definitely be faith, like considering things like persecution and things like that. And the kickback to Isaiah, for sure. I think it was a good one to throw out, yeah. Like, that's the type of shit you want to look at. Does it make sense? Is it, even if it's out of context, in a general sense, does it make sense with everything else that we know? I don't know. I think it's not wrong to say, like, within reason, everyone's going to suffer different things. So is your thing justification to take yourself out and put your family through hell? Or even if you don't have a family, is it moral to do so? Or are you supposed to be here doing something? I think to a degree, it diminishes this idea that specifically we're Christians, so we're talking about Christian people. As a Christian committing suicide, I think if you say, yes, it's okay, in almost any situation, you're diminishing the Christian value or belief that each individual has a very specific purpose when they're here, that you are here for something, even if that's just to be a mother to your kids, or that's just for me to be a dad to my daughter, and I do nothing else that's of any fucking value ever in my life, but that's it. That's still a thing that's super important. And then that's going to dictate how she grows up. And then her purpose may involve 10 people. And if I didn't do her right, she's not going to do them right. That's this cascading butterfly effect, right? But I think if we like condone suicide, you also have to say that, okay, individual human value and principle and purpose from God, it's irrelevant because I'm in pain or because I can't get off. What did we say earlier? Orgasm. I can't have sex, so my life is not of value. I lost 3 of my fingers, so now I can't play piano. Therefore, I'm going to kill myself. I think you have to be okay with saying, okay, individual purpose in being here bestowed from God is irrelevant. What I'm going through is greater than that. Kind of another aspect. Bruce said, when a person lives in crazy, intractable pain and they take themselves out because the pain isn't being managed, I totally understand the decision to unalive themselves, which I get, because that's exactly what my mom did. Still a question of, is it moral or is it not? It's like I said, I completely get why she did it. And after some time, like, I forgave her for it, but it doesn't change anything about the question. The question is still, was it right or was it wrong?
Right.
Which is the tougher question. And I definitely personally lean towards no. I think it lean towards no. I think I could see very, very few situations where, take somebody who's in so much pain that they literally don't ever get out of bed. Not like, oh, I can never get out of bed. And it's like you're out of the bed 5 hours a day. No, somebody who literally cannot ever get out of bed. They're peeing and going to the bathroom all over themselves every day, all day. They can't eat. They go through a tube, take the whole vegetable thing. Well, can somebody who's a vegetable live out their God-given purpose? I don't know. Maybe. I think even in the most dramatic of scenarios, maybe somebody comes to read to them from a charity, and in that somebody who's literally unconscious permanently still in some way changes the life of the person who comes to read to them. I can picture it a million different ways. I don't know
Yeah.
personally if it's ever okay. It doesn't mean I
And
don't
then,
get it, but
and I wonder if it's circumstantial too. Like maybe some people are going to turn on and some people aren't. That's another. What did Ruth say? Like you're in, like Ruth. No, you're not really in your right mind. If you're really sick and if you're really in pain, I promise you're just not in your right mind.
oh, absolutely no. That's
Yeah. Without question.
yeah, and not to like get fucking weird and personal and shit, but my mom was normal. We were like as normal ever was, and then all of a
Right.
sudden she just disappeared. Like you could tell she thought about it. Like there was search history and there were things to the way that she did it. Like she thought about it, but you can
Yeah.
tell it was only in a place of darkness, because otherwise she would have done everything about it differently. And I know that because I knew her very well. So I think if you're in your right mind, I don't think you're gonna do it. In most scenarios, the vast majority. I think there are some
Yeah,
people who maybe still would. I don't know.
I don't know. All I can tell you is that one surgery I had where I saw my dad and I don't know, some weird thing happened and I like sat up and there was no pain and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like I forgot how great it felt to not be in any pain whatsoever. And I was trying to go. I was like, okay, I have my life insurance policy, check. My kids could be with so and so, check. Like, and I was like, I'm done. And that didn't get to happen.
Right.
For whatever reason.
I think you know the reason.
I don't know. I'm just saying they have a life insurance policy. Don't tell them that.
Well, self deletion voids life insurance. So don't do
Actually,
that.
for this one, it doesn't. And
Really?
It wouldn't have been deletion. Yeah, I know, right? It would have been
Careful.
during surgery.
Oh,
during
okay.
surgery.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Hopefully my kids never see this video.
I don't think your kids want to be bored by me, except for the one that thinks I'm cute. Ruth said, Ruth said, my handicapped brother since age of 7 from a car accident has thought of ways to end his life in the past. These bodies are a burden. Yeah, that's a good example too. Yeah, so a handicapped brother since the age of 7. That's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And that's what I'm saying. It's a lot different once you're in it. Like I said before, I was very blatant, like, no. But like I said, if you see that clip, which I don't think I've had the guts to watch the video yet on Netflix, but yeah, it does make you think.
We'll watch it. We'll watch it here. It's a minute 30, 90 seconds. We'll watch it. So real quick though, with Ruth's example there, I think this brings you into the next kind of question, which is, okay, so then you should be able to, if and not towards Ruth, because she didn't say this, but if you are okay with somebody who becomes paralyzed or handicapped, of them self-deleting, I think you'd have a really hard time being logically consistent and saying you can't abort babies who will be handicapped, or you can't say the R word anymore, have Down syndrome or something like that. I can't think of it.
Grape.
What's
grape.
that?
We say grape, like the fruit.
No. People with mental disabilities, like Down syndrome.
Yeah.
People who are mentally handicapped, or maybe the kid's not going to have a leg or something. I don't know. But we can tell now. In most scenarios, we can tell now within the window of abortion, because now you can have abortion when the kid's 3 years old. So if you say, like, if you're handicapped, you can take your own life. I don't know if you can at all be logically consistent and then saying, well, but you can't abort a kid who's going to have Down syndrome, or you can't. I totally agree with you, Ghost. I think they're some of the most happy, fun people ever in the world, but it's still a massive argument. So say a Down syndrome person who's miserable all the time and they hate their lives. They can't speak properly. They can't understand people properly. Say like really far on kind of the spectrum of it damages their day-to-day ability to function in the world at all. And they're just kind of, you know, they can't take care of themselves in terms of the bathroom. They can't eat by themselves. They literally have to have somebody with them 24/7. Let's take that severity. If we were able to tell that in the womb, it's hard to be logically consistent. If you're allowed to take yourself out, if you're handicapped or have some kind of plight, but then you're going to say, but no, it's not okay it's not okay to abort a baby who's going to grow up like that. But then once they grow up, they can do that to themselves. I think it's hard. One, they'd be doing it to themselves, but if they're mentally handicapped, do they really understand? So I think it's still kind of tough. It's hard to reconcile that, in my opinion. Do I think people would argue that the baby deserves the choice? Yeah, but if they're handicapped, is it actually their choice? That's kind of my question. If you're severely handicapped, is it your choice? Are you logically deciding that? Or what is it?
You're talking about like the inability to communicate what your choice is, or just handicap in general?
So literally somebody who is so mentally handicapped that they cannot understand anything. They might be able to sit and watch TV, but they can't eat by themselves. If you ask them what 2 + 2 is, there's no ability to answer that question whatsoever. But they should have the choice to end their life. Is that what we're saying here? Because I don't know about that.
One thing that I guess I feel guilty for even thinking about is the costs medically.
Yeah, it's a lot.
For a kid. Yeah. And if you can even afford it. Unfortunately, I feel like that's like a huge factor in some of these decisions that are being made, more than it is ethics or morality.
Yeah, which is a huge other part of the question. But too, like, same thing. I think if we make that argument, I think it's hard to be logically consistent when it comes to just regular abortion. Well, if it's a financial plight and the woman's not going to be able to, or the family, the woman and the husband, say they're together and they're a good couple, but they're totally effing broke, it's going to ruin their life. They won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to pay for the baby. What kind of life is that baby going to have? That's how you kind of usher in abortion. I think that's the tough thing about all this shit, is that a lot of it, in my opinion, is if you're not firm on all of it, I think it's hard to be firm on any of it, because a lot of it is interconnected.
I feel like abortion, I don't know, because to me, there's always adoption.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Joe, I don't support my brother's ideation he had, but I understand. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't support it, but I get it. I understand. I can sympathize, maybe not empathize, but I can sympathize with it. And that said, my husband and I have had this conversation. We don't know what we'd do if that happened, because it would severely affect our daughter's life if we had to take care of a child like that. Yeah, which is fair. She'd be expected to help, get much less attention, etc. It wouldn't be fair to her, potentially. True, which are fair thoughts. And people will make you feel like shit for what you just said. And I totally get why you're saying it. And you're not saying
don't let them feel like shit.
You're not saying it's right or wrong. You are stating literal facts. And they're completely understandable things. I've thought about that 1,000 times. I was like, what if just like that, what becomes like this very kind of, for most people, a light feeling of like, we're bringing life into the world and we're stable enough. You know, maybe we struggle, maybe we're even on government assistance of some kind, but like in a general sense, this is exciting. Like, we're very happy. This is, for the most part, an exciting, fun thing. It takes kind of that feeling to like, holy fucking shit, what are we going to do? What is our life going to look like? Everything about everything is now dramatically different. Yeah, at the same time, like, I have a cousin who lives that life. He's one of the coolest fucking guys you've ever met. And he's super smart, but can't live by himself. And so he, lives with my aunt and wildly happy people. But I don't think anybody in that family would ever say that their life wasn't really hard. It's difficult. I also don't think any of them would ever trade it for anything, even if, they were asking you or you asked them in private and nobody would ever know. I don't think there's any part of them that would have ever traded it for anything at all. But I'm sure there are some people who would. And so that's kind of why it's tough, because it goes either way. All right, before I forget again for the 30th time, I want to play this 90-second video real quick that Rodriguez put in. So what was this? Extremist official trailer. Oh God, I know what this is. Okay. Oh no. Hold on. Can you guys hear it? Uh-oh. Let me try this. Hold up. There we go.
Selena, can you squeeze my hand?
No, I can't hear it.
Here's the reality. We're all going to die. Everyone standing in this room is going to die one day.
Yeah, it'll be
And it's good to have a little
mixing when you have YouTube and Discord open at the same time. It prioritizes the call.
Wait, YouTube can hear it now. You guys can't?
Yeah, if they're just watching YouTube, they'll be able to hear it, but Discord has audio mixing, so it lowers everything else's volume minus the call.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I can hear it
Let's
now that you
say
played
and
it. Sorry.
how.
Okay, here you go.
I want to make sure that she knows that we've explored all the options.
Every day, people are attached permanently to machines. My concern is we're going to cause more suffering without likely benefit. The other approach is let her pass naturally.
It would feel like murder to pull her life support.
If I had to make the decision for myself, then take me off, and if I breathe on my own, then that's fine. That's God's will.
Amen.
How would you feel if you were not getting better on a breathing machine?
Then I don't want to be on a breathing machine.
It's his decision, but I don't want to see him go.
We're going to support you through this.
Pull the crash cart in.
She won't wake up from this in a meaningful way.
Knowing at some point you got to get to that reality, and now it's here.
All right. Well, we get the picture. So, yeah, see, that gets tough. I think that's another good question that I actually didn't really think about is, I guess I kind of said it with the vegetable thing, but I didn't really think about it. People who are on life support, if you pull the plug, are you really killing them? Like, what about, 100 years ago? That didn't exist.
Right.
So I don't know. I kind of struggle with that. Like if you're already being artificially kept alive, you're not actually living naturally. I don't know. I'd have to think more about it, but I don't know if like off the cuff, I feel like that's suicide or I feel like it would be murder unless the other person, if they didn't want to be unplugged, I suppose, and somebody unplugged them, I guess that could still be seen as murder. But I think if you unplugged yourself or you told somebody to unplug you, I don't necessarily know if I would see that in a negative light. You're artificially living. You're not. I don't know. That's tough. That's a harder situation for me. Oh. Yeah, choice. Go said again, choice. Choice is the biggest thing for sure. It gets harder when choice becomes a more nuanced word in the situation. How much choice does an individual really have? Are there people who argue that keeping someone alive totally via machine and artificially is also playing God? That it's not his will? I don't agree, but yeah, for sure. I think that's more of like the extremist side of some of the Protestant Christian groups, but they don't agree with life support in general. But I think on that kind of
Yeah,
but that's a dumb no, really. Then you shouldn't agree with medication. You shouldn't agree with any sort of medical intervention at all. What's the difference?
Fertility.
Yeah, that's my question is like, when we were talking about like, oh, some people say that God ordains when people die, is like, does that mean dying, you have a car crash or a paper cut? Like, is that because, the
Right.
ventilator stopped working and you croaked, or because you're dying of infection because you never put a Band-Aid on that cut? Like,
Right.
When is it ordained?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a really dumb thought. That said, I agree, Joe. I think modern science is what God put some people out here to do. Yeah, see, I agree with that I think the world is going to develop how the world develops due to people being how people are, which is a part of why I kind of hold fast to things like capital punishment, because I think things like medical development and societal development are contingent upon the society. So if we can't maintain safe and functional societies, we can't develop, maintain, and grow things like medical intervention. So if we allow, Satan to run rampant in society, it diminishes our ability to grow in things like the medical field. Therefore, more babies die. Therefore, a million different things in society being drawn back and held back, and human flourishing being completely diminished. So for me, like that's it. It's for me, it's not black and white. But what is black and white is damage versus good. And this meter of if somebody is being more evil and they're connected to more of, like, call it demonic energy than they are of good on a consistent basis, and they are causing so much damage that it is erasing 100 people's good, I think it is for the benefit of all of humanity that the person is no longer allowed to be a part of humanity. Personally, to wrap up my views, I got to go here real quick. Actually, like 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I got to roll. So, any last things, or quick topics, or whatever you guys got? Now's the time. I think God ordains the ceiling of how old we can possibly live, but I don't think God ordains each individual death. That would be sadistic. Yeah, but then why do people live longer before? At least that's what we're led to believe, right?
It says in Genesis, right?
Yeah. And other texts too, like extra biblical texts. 200, 300, 400.
Yeah, but God was annoyed with us and basically saying we were going to mess it up anyway. So he was trying to help us out by cutting our life, which, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think statistics play better in the longer life span. I think because more people, the older they get, I feel like I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to actually see, is like statistics on behavioral morality as an individual ages. Because I would probably guess, I would maybe argue that your immoral state of life is between 15 and 25. And then after 30, that probably levels out for most people.
I know in the old folks' homes, they actually have high levels of suicide and STDs.
They do have that. Yeah, there are. But I mean,
Can
you blame them?
Mix.
Can you blame them? I mean, that's kind of a different thing, though. Like, as you get older, like, some people are just going to want to go, which, again, like,
I mean, it falls into morality, right? And ethics.
Yeah, but having sex isn't immoral.
So what you're saying is they're either coming or going?
That was so good.
Couldn't miss that one. I'm sorry.
That was so good. Yeah, I don't know though. Like, suicide, we've already talked about, so take that one out. STDs, like, I don't know, dude. I mean, if that's the only immoral thing they're doing, I would still argue the average 20-year-old is doing it more. So I think even then, you come down. But I think crime for sure peaks in 20s and early 30s. But I would guess probably most of, like, immoral behavior is in the younger years. And then I think you just get older. Like, you're done with the shit. You're tired. You understand consequences more. Maybe you've dealt with some consequences that you don't want to live with again. You're too what?
You're too sick to do anything.
Yeah, or you get sicker and more unhealthy as you get older. Like, everything points to it. So I don't know. Just like an interesting side note, I guess. All right, let me see if I had anything else pertinent, and then I've got to run. I got to try to sleep tonight. Oh, we didn't do Reddit. I'll save Reddit for another time. I don't know. We got into a lot. Okay. If anybody has anything else, feel free. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, are we just? Well, I was wondering that part why I stayed up, because I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. But we can do it another time if that's possible. Are we going to go over abortion, or since we touched on it a little bit, is that topic over?
Yeah, so you were a little bit late. And so I gave some caveats about abortion. But I'm down to do it. So maybe we'll throw it into another one. Let's do that. So I'll add it. I'll add it to the poll. I'll add it to the poll. Because I think what I was saying in the beginning, I'll say it again like in a quicker fashion. But what I was saying in the beginning is like, if anybody wants to talk about abortion, I'm cool to talk about it. What I don't want to do is like have this circular conversation of abortion's wrong, where like all of us are just saying abortion is wrong, but saying it in kind of a different way. And it's just not productive, I guess is all. It's not bad or it's not wrong or I don't think anything negative. It becomes like when I hear Christians talk about abortion, it's just like abortion's wrong because this. Yes, abortion's wrong because this. And it just goes in
And then
circles.
this other thing.
Yeah. So I was
The question is the
Right.
mindset, the morality and ethics behind the decision.
I think also is interesting the circumstances. I think there are a lot of ways to approach the concept of abortion. So what I was saying in the beginning was like, if we can approach it from a unique perspective and like talk about things that you don't hear every single day and try to like have the tough conversations, like the situations where you don't agree with it, but you kind of get where they're coming from. At least you still don't agree with it, but you can like be a human being and have logical, rational thought and be like, I kind of get what you're saying. So like that perspective, I'm down for. I just didn't want to have the Christian circular abortion bad, Hitler bad, devil bad conversation. So, but yeah, I'm down. So I'll put it back in the poll. I find it interesting when it's talked about from like a unique perspective. Ghost said abortion rates based on country, culture, boom. So we'll put it in like that. We'll do abortion statistics and then maybe look at religious statistics about abortion, because you'd be surprised actually how many proclaimed Christians have also admitted to having abortions. It's a very, very, very high number.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, well, that's great. Thank you, Ghost. That's an awesome idea. So we'll do like statistics, demographics, culture, and then also from kind of like the moral front of it.
And I want to hear from women, Nat, Jules, Ruth, all of you guys.
I would love that. Yeah. Yeah. When we do abortion, it would be great to have more women on here. I'll force Kat to come on. Tonight, we are both like deathly ill. And so she's in the shower trying to sweat it out. But I'll bring her on for that. And then, yeah, ladies, I think I'd much rather hear some of you guys on here for that. I want to hear both perspectives for sure. Let the girlies talk. Yeah, please. Please, please,
That's
please.
right.
Okay, and then reminder, I gotta roll, I gotta go sleep. Reminder, Saturday night news is dead. We're done. No more news. We all kind of decided collectively that we're effing sick of it. So instead, every Saturday night is now movie night. So you'll see in the events tab, that's the only thing that's changed. Thursday is still what we do. Sunday is still what we do, Bible study. But now Saturday at 7 p.m. is movie night. So that is held in Discord only. It is not on YouTube ever, because I want to keep the YouTube channel. So that will be in Discord. There's a little channel down here called Movie Night. And
Joe, I
go
had
ahead.
a movie, so you know.
Well, you got to put it. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. Is then when you come into the now in the streams and lives, we have Thesis, where we do what we're doing right now. And now there's movie night. So now all of the recording, because I record it. And when I record it, I also put the chat up there. So if you miss a movie night, but you want to review it or watch it or whatever, you can also see the chat. So you get the whole experience other than live. So you'll have those there. And then the pinned comment, this will always be at the top, is suggestions. So if you have a movie, you want to put it, go ahead. What are you trying to say?
No, yeah, like I was trying to do that for like this extremist Netflix thing. And when I click the plus, it says you do not have permission to post in this channel.
Okay, so yeah, you can't. You can't post. You can reply. If you tried to come in here, so same with Thesis. If you guys try to come in and make a new post, it shouldn't let you, because these are like specifically like each week has a topic. There's nothing else. So you have to come into a post, and then once you open this, like if you come into did the CIA discover the spiritual world, and then come down to reply, you should be able to reply down there.
No, it doesn't, because it says an error occurred. Please try again. You can't. I'm telling you.
Is this what happened to you with one of the other channels too?
I guess.
I think it did. I'll look at your permissions. But for everybody else, you should. Ghost was able to. So Test it. If you can't for some reason, let me know. Rodriguez, we did have a problem, so I'll have to look at your permissions. Otherwise, just drop, like, he put I think some of the actual videos here, but you can just put a name too. I'll find it. You can put the name, the link, whatever, and then I'm just gonna add a big ass list to the top there, and then every week, just like we do for Thursday, when I post a poll for Thursday's topic, you'll have 2 polls every week now. So one will be for movie night and one will be for Thursday night, except for the next 2 weeks for Thursday, because next week we're doing Luciferianism, Satanism, and maybe atheism, but at least Satanism and Luciferianism. And then on the 16th, hopefully, if Ghost is down to jump in and is ready and feeling okay, then we'll do Gnosticism in depth, because I'm just not that knowledgeable about it at all. So if he's down and wants to do it, then cool. Otherwise, I'll replace that and we'll post a poll for Thursday too. But there will be a movie poll and there will be a Thursday night poll moving forward. So we do movie, we do Thursday, and then we do Bible study on Sunday. I think it'll be much better. We're all sick of the damn news. All right, I think we're good. Rodriguez, I'll fix your stuff right now though. I'll look at it before I get off the computer.
Yes, I appreciate.
Yes, I got you. Just a Gnostic amateur, not an expert. Yeah, well, you know more than me though. So if you know enough to at least like spark a conversation, or find some good resources, I'll find some too. If we have enough to read through, maybe it's just a literal live study session, and we just, as long as we have some sources ready and stuff, we can just read through it and kind of talk through it. It's interesting. It's an interesting, I don't even know what you call it, a thought process. It's kind of a shitty way to say it, but it's an interesting topic. But if not, I'll post a poll and we can come back to that at another point. It's something I just haven't spent enough time on. All right, that's it. I'm out. I love you all. Good talk. Saturday, we are watching Satan's Guide to the Bible, which is actually really good and really interesting. So if you're at all able to come, I highly recommend it. And if you cannot, I will post the recording there for you to be able to see. But it's a really interesting short film, or whatever you want to call it. All right, I love you guys. I'm out. I'm going to sleep. Everybody have a lovely evening.
Love you too. Good night.
Later,
Bye.
y'all.